on here today is actually how you interrogate a brief, how you push your ideas to develop them further, to get them to a place that's hopefully useful, interesting, in the right line. How do you know when you've had a bad idea? How do you collaborate? How do you work with other people to make the best of what you're doing? And also, we will then look at and use the example of the Met Council brief to do that as we go forward. So, first up, Rufus, could I ask you just to talk a little bit about how you, if you've given a brief, not this one specifically, any brief, what are the things that you do? How do you approach a brief?
Hi. So, for the graphic designers here, that's where I come from, and also I'm a digital graphic designer, or digital creative director, so I'm very much focused on a very specific sphere. However, we touch on advertising, we touch on copy, we touch on what we do. What I would say about briefs, whenever you're given a brief, the obvious thing is the thing that you never do, which is read it. And honestly, the number of times I've sat with a creative after a briefing session and gone, so did you read the brief? And they go, so read it and write on it. You know, the best way to know that you've read a brief is to write on it. To sit and write notes against it, pick out things that you think are important. Even if it's the wrong thing, pick out things that you think are important. With every brief comes the challenge of who the audience are. Be very clear about who you're talking to. Because it's all very well coming up with an amazing idea, but if it's not going to communicate to the audience that you're talking to, then it's not a great idea. It's a great idea for someone else. I've got to make a slight apology here. Anyone who was at Telford yesterday, I'm going to reuse 4 things that I did yesterday. There are loads of ways to answer a brief, but there's 4 that I think are really good. Okay, so I would say the first one would be state the obvious, read the brief, and then present back the obvious solution. And stick with it. Stick with the right thing. So if Ron Seal does what it says on the tin, say it does what it says on the tin. The second way is to challenge preconceptions. So if you take something that seems to be obvious and turn it on its head, does it still work? That needs a bit of research, needs a bit of thinking, but it can be a really effective way of getting your message across. A good example of that would be BP's logo. Okay, BP, a horrible, earth-destroying company. Actually, their logo looks like they make flowers. They can say they make flowers because they kind of do-ish, but it's a way of challenging preconception. Third one, emote. Come up with an idea that makes me feel the same thing as you. Okay, John knows that about the moment. Wonderful, wonderful piece of advertising. Wonderful. And I don't have kids. It makes me want to have kids so that they wrap presents badly and give you them. It's a wonderful piece of advertising, but it touches you. And finally, reveal something. Show me something that I have not seen before. The example that I used yesterday of this was FedEx. Any graphic designer worth their salt will point to the arrow in the FedEx logo and go, look at that, isn't that clever? Right? If the next time you see a FedEx van, look for the arrow. You're a graphic designer if you spot it. Anyone else is just a normal player. And finally, reread the brief. You've got to reread it. Every time you come up with a solution, read the brief. That's what I would do on a brief.
Hi, yes, I'm coming from a slightly different angle because I work in publishing and do the book covers. And I would reiterate what Rufus said about reading the brief and rereading the brief. And when you read it, make sure that you sort of think, what does the client want? But also, like for me, I have to think what the author would want, what sales would want. Sales may want great sales figures. I may want to try and use some innovative process or something that hasn't been done before, and there may be a way of marrying both our needs together to try and create something a little bit different and a little bit new. And the brief is also an opportunity for you to ask questions, and it's just a starting point. So you get given the brief, but you're definitely there to add ideas and make sure that what they're asking for is what they really need. You need to think about who your audience is, and what's the best way to reach them, because it's going to be different, sort of, especially in a brief like the one you'll be working on today. They may be in different parts of the world, their tastes and their conventions that they're used to, and what would they respond best to, really? Is it a big stunt, some sort of sustained, coordinated campaigns, or a mix of things? And sometimes like how to sort of maximise the impact of what you've done. So I know I went on a book cover for historical fiction, for example, and obviously we did the posters and we did bookmarks, we did events. Then what we also did was shone the cover onto the Houses of Parliament, onto London Bridge. It was only up for a few seconds, but the impact you got from that, it was photographed, it was in the press, and then you could show it on the internet, and then people in America absolutely loved it as well. It's just got a huge fan base over there, so it was just like it was a very fast stuff, but it had like a long sort of life on it, and play to your strengths, because here today you're from different disciplines, so take advantage of those other people, because when obviously as an art director you design yourself, but you also cherry picking the best people to work on each project, and they'll have photographers, illustration, and work together. Don't be sort of scared of collaborating and feeling like it's, when you're working in a group, often what you'll find is individually you all have these strengths, but when you come together you'll make something much bigger than you would on your own, and much fresher. And it's a great sounding board as well, because if you've got an idea and everyone's like, oh, I want to work with you, this is great, you kind of know you've got a good one, and together you're going to make it something hopefully really manageable. And if you get stuck when you're thinking of a brief, you can't really do this today, but normally you talk to people on different things. Sometimes it's best to just, instead of just staring at the screen, go out and just do something else, because when you're not thinking about it, you'll often, it just comes to you, and that's been said a million times, and it's definitely true. Your brain works on it when you're not. So that's what I would say. Just hopefully helpful for you guys today.
Pete, can I pick up, talking about that going out and doing other things, is there anything that you kind of go, alright, I read the brief and then I go and make myself a cup of coffee, or I go and do this? Are there any anecdotes, kind of stories of how you...
I quite often go and make a cup of coffee for Rafi, and then you do go for a walk. I mean, I'll get a brief, we have a long turnover, maybe a year or so. I mean, we have to get the book in before then, but it gives you time to kind of say, right, I've got the brief, I'll read it, and then I'll just leave it for a bit. And it is kind of first thing in the morning when I wake up that maybe I'll get an idea, or maybe I won't. Yeah. So I do leave it for a bit, because it's important to do that.
Yeah. What I would do approaching a brief is, the first thing obviously to do is to read it, and if you feel like you're reading a brief and it's not going in, then go and make a cup of tea and come back to it, because if you're not underlining things that resonate with you, it means nothing's going in. This is like me reading the brief that you're about to do. It's anything that sticks in my mind, or that feels like a sort of gut, kind of like, well, that's interesting, I just underline it or make a wee note next to it, sort of thing, so I can then, when I'm skim reading it again, I can go to things that I first felt were interesting. What I then do is try and work out, what is it actually asking me to do? Briefs can be quite long, and there's a lot of interesting facts, a lot of considerations in there and all the rest of it, but what is it actually asking me to do? And then I write that on a bit of paper, quite large. And then I work out, who is it they want me to do it for? Who is the audience? And then I write that on a bit of paper. It might be, in this case, the entire world, right? So there you go. And but it might be, 14 to 18-year-olds, or it might be whatever the case may be. So I'm quite clear, what it is they want, who it is it's for, why it is they're doing it. So I write that on a bit of paper. And then what I try and do is write a complete nutshell of that whole thing. So for example, on this one, the nutshell, make people know that the 21st of September is Peace Day. There's a load of other stuff, right? But that's the thing that I need to know. So any brief that I'm doing, I always try and write a one-liner. And then I put it into a nice font, I print it out really big and put it right at the top of your wall. Because when I work, I put everything on walls, and I put all my ideas up so I can absorb and take it all in. And I'm not forgetting anything. Put the brief on the wall as well, because sometimes you put the brief, and I don't know about you, but I have loads of bits of paper everywhere, and then it gets lost, and then I can't forget who it was for, what I was trying to do in the first place, because I've got absorbed in something else. Stick it up and always reference it. I think quite a lot of briefs are often written of what the client thinks they want, and I always think, okay, what do they think they want, and what do I actually think that is that they need? So briefs are there to be challenged, but they're not there to be challenged and ignored. If you want to challenge it, go back early and then ask some questions if you have that opportunity to. If there's a forum about it, like in this case, can I just check, can I just do the rest of it? Don't just break the brief and go against it for the sake of it because you think you're just being mad and funny to break the brief. So I think ask some questions about it. And I think the first starting point for any brief is to do your homework. What is this thing about? If you've been asked to sell DAs, then you need to know DAs inside out. You need to know the audience inside out as well. DAs might not be talking to you, they might be talking to mums or whatever, and if you're not a mum, how do you understand what they're like? So you're doing a bit of research about that. So I think doing your homework and putting yourself as closely into the position of the person who is not the client's shoes, but the audience's shoes, puts you in the best position to be able to feel that you're going to understand what it is that they're after. And then I think, there's lots of things to do. You get stuck, you go out, you go and visit galleries. Inspiration is everywhere. If you're sitting stuck with a brief, you don't know where to start, go out, go and make a cup of tea, go for a walk, talk to somebody, all the rest of it. But then, for me, what I just have to do is just sit down with a bit of paper, I've done my homework and all the rest of it, and I just need to start to think about it and get focused on it and go, what am I trying to do? And usually what I start doing is I write the word, 21st, whatever, do you know what I mean? And then I write, what is that, it's a date, it's in September, who am I talking to the world? And then I just start writing all this kind of stuff down and all the rest of it. And then I start ringing, that's quite interesting, that's sort of an interesting angle. And I try and find territories that I think could be interesting. Sometimes it might be, if you're selling DAs, you're like, right, well, there's the whole doorstep thing, and then there's the whites and white and white, and then there's the, there's the clothes, and then there's mums, and then there's all this kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So there's all these different territories, and they're all starting points for thoughts, to be launch pads to go off and explore those areas. And then sometimes, you just kind of think, right, well, if everybody's saying it's whiter than white, what Pershall did was then go, well, let's celebrate dirt then. The best way to get people to buy soap powder is to get all their clothes dirty and then we'll sell more soap powder. So a genius thing that they did was say, dirt is good. So everybody else is banging on about how whites are, because that's what the clients told me to say. But then what they said was, dirt is good, and everybody was all dirty. And to see people dirty in a, soap powder commercial was genius, and that is turning the brief on its head. And that's kind of thinking, they think they've asked for what they want, but what it is that they need, what they need is a completely different approach to what everyone else is doing. And that's when they sort of flip the convention. And then, the thing that we were talking about yesterday, people get carried away with briefs. You kind of think you've got an idea, and that idea is that, and then you go, and then I can do that with that idea, and then this, and then that, and then that, and then that. And then before you know it, you're carried away down the road with an idea, and you've completely, totally forgotten who it was for in the first place, and what it was they were asking you to do. And that's why having a big thing on a wall, having the brief, always going back and revisiting it. Because before you know it, we're talking about it as Chinese whispers. You're way down there and you think somebody's asked you for a dance and asking you to go to war, and you get completely mixed up. So always revisit the brief. And, and it's good to revisit the brief if you feel you're getting lost as well. So that's how I would start.
In terms of the student awards, one thing I would say, talking about ideas going off, disappearing, is that is something that we see a lot of times is the obvious answer is the one that people always go with, and they think they've got a really funny twist on the obvious answer. And that's one thing, if I could highlight to you, is just the very process of going out and showing other people your idea and seeing their reaction and seeing what they think, do they care about the funny idea, really makes such a big difference, because that element of research, of actually testing your idea with people you know, or people who don't know anything about advertising, about graphic design, and just going, what about this, will kind of help you. Either they get it immediately, but they kind of go, yeah, and so what? Or they get it and they're like, that's really clever, and then you can know that actually you've got some kind of insight. And the one thing that a lot of the student awards entries that we see that don't do so well, the reason is that they've got to that first point of, yeah, this is a funny idea, but they haven't then tested it and pushed it that bit further. And yes, so that's one thing I just want to highlight. What I'll do first is we'll just kick off and I'll just read through some of the top lines about this brief. What I'd like you guys to do is think about what the important information is as we read through it for the first time, okay? So, given, on the left-hand side you've got important information, that is the sponsor. Can anyone tell me who the sponsor is for this brief?
Interbrand.
Excellent. There can be confusion because the sponsor could be and might be considered to be Peace One Day, who is the organisation, but it's not. The sponsor for this brief is Interbrand. That's why they have a big logo. Great. Right. Moving on. Okay. First thoughts.
Good brief.
That's nice.
3 billion people? Surely you can reach so many more.
Is that all?
Come on. 3 billion people. Is that 18 to 20? ABC 1?
My first thought would be, shit, oh my god, what a big brief that is. It's quite daunting, isn't it, when you look at something like that that's saying we want to change the world and we want 3 billion people in the world to be aware of what we're doing. It's quite a challenge.
It's also it's a good opportunity because it's not for a specific target audience, it's for everyone, so all around the world. So everyone's got to see your work. Exactly right. So one of the first things we'd say is an approach to any problem like this is think about the little bets. Again, another book, but nevertheless, the little bets, the idea is bite-sized chunks. So this is not going to be solvable, or it's not going to be resolved by thinking about it as I'm talking to the entire world. You're going to have to think about how can I talk to a section of the world and hopefully have an idea that will translate and that can be reproduced and taken on by other people, possibly a viral solution, but possibly not. The other thing I want to say is this is all about raising awareness. It's not about an advertising campaign necessarily. It might be, but it's not only that. It might be that you decide to create a product that raises awareness for the 21st of September. It might be a whole number of iterations of creative work that helps people know about Peace One Day. So don't focus in too much straight away. Okay, what I'd like you to do is look at the brief, and basically what we'd like to do, explore the idea of peace. What is peace? What does it mean to you? Start a discussion around that, and then ideally brainstorm some ideas about how you would tackle this brief. Where would you start? Remember the things that we've just been talking about in terms of you can't expect to do it all in one go. You can have a small idea, a big idea. You can do whatever you want. You want to try and encourage collaboration. You want to try and get as many people aware as possible, but it could be in a step that leads to something else, that leads to something else. These are purely ideas. What will happen with the white pencil brief is hopefully that the best idea will then go on to be executed and delivered. So that's quite an exciting prospect. Think it's now 10 to 6. Gosh, 10 to 6. You've got half an hour to do that. What I would like you to do is not worry at all about the idea. What I want you to do is discuss, get as many things as you can down onto paper, onto notepads. Hopefully you've all got pens yourselves. We'll
we'll be here to help you discuss the ideas, but we'd like to just get as much down, and what I will ask you to do at 6:20 is each team is going to make a 2-minute elevator pitch style presentation. What the presentation will ideally be your best idea that you've come up with at the end of it. If you don't have an idea, don't panic that you don't feel that this is the one. I would like you to talk through what you discussed, what you thought about, so that other people can benefit from your thinking. Remember that any idea is only going to get better by hearing everybody else's ideas too, and how you develop that. Don't worry at all about sharing your ideas, please. Another thing I'd say is just commonality, and that was what was really nice about that idea, I think, is that you're thinking about what brings people together and what connects people, you know, regardless of kind of culture and so on. And that's kind of one of the biggest problems with this brief is, you know, how you talk to all those people. So that was really nice insight.
Yeah, I mean, it was really nice to kind of see you kind of tap into the impossible to ignore part of the brief and probably kind of like move away from the cliches of the piece and all the rest. It's nice to see a group kind of like, especially a group put together so quickly, to kind of like go, right, okay, that's the thing we're going to concentrate on and come up with ideas around that.
I agree with what Jack said. I think it's true. It's that infectiousness, and that's how you're going to spread it. And also what's nice about those sort of things is you can be any age and from anywhere, and it really will sort of still work because everybody understands that. It's nice. Yeah.
And I think if you'd been pitching this, if you were standing in front of him pitching it, that relevance to something that's currently happening is really important, because people can immediately kind of like put themselves in that space and go, oh yeah, that would motivate me to do something, or at least make me think about something. It's really nice to kind of like see people all of a sudden latch onto something that is, you know, current and is going to elevate your campaign. So really good. Nice. Right. This is only just a minor thing. If you're going to stand up and talk about presentation and present, even if you hate it, right, just kind of like go, right, what's my key points, right, and just do those key points, because actually your idea underneath that was really nice, but never acknowledge the fear. Never acknowledge the fear of presenting. You just get through it, you go bright red, and you go, oh God, I hate this, and I hate this, and I hate this, and everyone does, and like, there's no one likes performing. Right? So don't worry about that. The idea was strong, and like you have to have confidence in that idea, and you have to stand up and go, this is my idea. The fact that you took something digital and then kind of like to reveal something else was really nice, and I think you could probably expand on it by having your image projected in places like against the castle and against, like, I don't know, what's a big building in London that you're allowed to project on? Anyone? Something in Holston, right? So, you know, you could have it projected on large buildings around the world. That could be a really, really powerful message. And also there's a take-home from it. If I text it, I might get something back, even if it's a message of positivity from someone else. So it's a really nice, strong idea. I would just say, never stand up and acknowledge the fear.
Sure. I think the collaborative part of it was the thing for me that I took from it. Actually, it was the whole idea of this thing is people do kind of work together across the world. Maybe it's in their hometown, maybe it's across the world, as I say, but like the fact that you're actually working with people to do that and keep violence down or whatever, it's showing that through solidarity with people. That's what I liked about it.
And it's the personal messages as well, so you can compare how they would be different, what peace means to each person right around the world. Because it'll be different depending on where you are, and this is a really great way of showcasing them all together.
One thing I was just thinking is it was really interesting hearing everybody talk as we went around the room and as you presented. A lot of similar ideas there, and that's one thing I would just say is just think about those similar ideas in this kind of brief. That's something that actually works really well. Normally in the Student Awards, that might not be something that works really well for you, but in this kind of, you know, capturing the world, something that means something to a lot of people, it's probably going to take you somewhere interesting. thinking about this one particularly, commonality, I say again, that probably was one of the things that came out to me, something that touches lots of different people, some common themes, something that means something to everybody is kind of probably going to be a good place to start. We talked about causing an emotional response, so making people care, give a shit about what it is that you're doing. We also talked about relevance to the moment, so how the thing's going to be realised, and that's got to be something, hopefully, that, you know, that contextualises that into the now. Why people should do something, why people should notice, engage with whatever your idea is. The context of war and peace we talked about, and you know, the kind of that comparison of one to the other. The method of communication that you use, thinking about where people are, where the spaces they are already, to kind of, you know, help getting your message across more easily. So, you know, the Facebooks, the social media networks, of course, all of those things are good things. There are other things, you know, there's the fact that everybody gets up in the morning. There are other things, you know, other places where people do the same things, where they are the same things. Just think about where they are and how you can, you know, how you can be there with them. The other thing we were talking about was bigger organisations, so thinking about who you can tap into and use the things that are already in existence to make the selling of your idea more easy. So thinking about, you know, who are the right kind of partners and which kind of organisation might be the one to get the messages out there. And collaboration and personalisation both came out as themes. So not only do you want to be working with other people, but you need to have something personal that people can relate to, that they want to do something with. So all of those things seem to be quite important and came out of all of your ideas, so thank you.
It was brilliant to watch the buzz of activity, and it was like, you know, watching a design studio in action, and seeing how, you know, people who don't know each other from totally different areas, disciplines, all that kind of stuff, and how you just got your head down and looked for this sort of, it was like the greater good, you know, it's like, right, we need to solve peace, come on, you know, and everybody just sort of rolled their sleeves up and you know, weren't held back, we all don't know them, or it just got into it, and it was brilliant to see. It was just like a total hive of activity, so, you know, good job, totally.